Do you love the wizarding world of Harry Potter? Stay tuned for my conversation with a creative designer who worked on the Harry Potter films, studio tours, and theme park attractions. Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your guided tour through the worlds of Disney and Imagineering. I'm your host, Matthew Krull, and it's my job to explore the stories and places we love and the people who bring them to life. In today's episode, we're taking a slight detour from Disney to talk about another magical world, the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I've been a fan of this franchise since I first read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the late 90s. Needless to say, I've read every book and seen every film. My discussion today is with a globally recognized costume designer and creative director who worked on the Harry Potter films, studio tours, and attractions. Although this topic branches beyond Disney, I think you'll find the conversation to be very similar to my other interviews on the show, and an interesting one, especially for those who love this franchise. As you fasten your seatbelt, I encourage you to take out your mobile devices and search for Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. Better yet, if you're looking for ad-free episodes, bonus content, or the ability to comment directly on the podcast, head to patreon.com/imaginationskyway, where you can sign up for a free account or a premium subscription. And if this episode leaves you yearning for a trip to Disney or any other destination, reach out to our partners and sponsors at KMV Travel, voted the top travel agency in Orlando in 2025. To get started, visit kmvtravel.com/skyway. As we begin our journey, please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your journey aboard Imagination Skyway. While this podcast has always focused on all things Disney, there is another franchise, I'll call it, that has always been a strong part of my fandom. It's something that I know a lot of you listening enjoy as well. And in the case of Walt Disney World or Disneyland, it's actually just up the road if you want to go visit these locations. And those are all based on the world of Harry Potter, which is a world that is also filled with magic and joy and mystery and adventure. And if you are a fan of the books or the films or the theme park attractions, I think you're really going to enjoy today's episode, because I have with me a very special guest whose name is Laurent Guinci. He's affectionately known as Lolo, and he's globally recognized as a costume designer and creative director whose career, as you'll find out in just a few moments, has become deeply intertwined with the legacy of the Harry Potter franchise. And I'm so excited to chat with him today. So Lolo, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. Wow, what a great introduction. It's cool. Who's that guy?
Well, we're going to meet him on the show today and talk a lot more and talk a lot more about your career. Before we jump into that, I always love to start with some fun, quick, rapid-fire questions just to give listeners a little more idea about you and about your, we'll call it fandom, but I've actually branched out these questions to other topics. And I'm just going to ask you three quick questions before we actually jump into your career and other aspects of your life that I'm really interested to discuss. The first one is, I know you've been working on a number of films throughout your career, but if you could have worked on a film, whether it happened during your career or even before your career began, before you were born, name any film that you want, any film that you wish you could have worked on that unfortunately you did not get the chance to work on.
Can I name two?
Yeah, of course you can name two.
Top Gun.
Ooh.
Definitely one of my favorite films of my childhood. And The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh, both excellent answers. Those would be fantastic movies to work on, and I love those answers.
I have, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have a little story about The Devil Wears Prada. I was in New York last July, and I was weirdly thinking about it, and I thought, I wonder where the office, Elias Clark office, has been shot. And I find the building a couple of blocks away from my hotel, and I decided to go just for wonder and just look at the building because I love the architecture in New York. this is me, I arrive, and they're actually shooting The Devil Wears Prada too. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I see the cameras, and I knew there was shooting in the city, but I wasn't sure. It was literally the first week of shooting. And then as I'm standing there, there's a voice inside me said, just stay another 5 minutes. And I did. And I don't get starstruck. I've met so many celebrities, fortunately, in my life, and you learn to treat them as everyone. And then there she is, this Meryl Streep stepping out of the building and going into her car. And I was like, wow. And I had that kind of sparkle inside me. It was just incredible. And I
Yeah.
felt quite happy about that.
That is such an incredible story. What's perfect timing that you were there for the second filming, and it just is I could only imagine feeling starstruck if I had seen Meryl Streep as well. She's just a complete star in every sense of the word. So that's
Absolutely.
amazing. I
Amazing
want to,
person.
yes, for sure. I want to jump across the pond because this is a little bit of a selfish question, I think, because I would love to go back to London, and I have been trying to ask as many locals as possible lots of different questions. So I know that you not only work in a creative capacity, but you're also a self-proclaimed foodie, and you live in the UK. So which London neighborhood, in your opinion, because I know there are many of them, is there a London neighborhood that has the best food options, or is there a particular restaurant that's your favorite in London?
London has come a long way in terms of food from what it was in the late 90s. There's such an evolution in the food, and you can actually eat well in a lot of places. So I think it covers, there's not a particular area that I like in terms of food. But I do love a pizza at Italy in Liverpool Street. I love going to the Ivy Brasserie. It's constant and it's good. Especially, I love the Ivy Asia in Mayfair and St Paul's. There's so many places now where you can have really good food. But and of course, Balthazar that I discovered in New York as well. I first discovered Balthazar in New York, and I absolutely loved the ambiance and the service and how impeccable the service is and the food. And I actually prefer the one in New York than the one in London.
Well, that's easy for me, so I'll just make sure to go there. I haven't been there yet, so I'll hop on the train
Oh, no.
and
Next
take a
trip to New
visit.
York, I need to go with you.
Yes, please. Next time you're in New York, let me know. I'm here. And my last question before we jump into your to the real meat of the conversation here, we're going to talk a little bit about being a fan of Harry Potter versus being a creator of Harry Potter, and that those two don't always necessarily intertwine. But I know you have at least some knowledge of the Harry Potter franchise, and there are, of course, at Hogwarts, 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. This could be, for a lot of Harry Potter fans, this is a divisive question. It's also one that fans build morale around each other being in the same houses. So anyway, do you know, if you have ever taken the Pottermore quiz, if you are assigned, do you know if you have a particular house, or if not, is there a particular house that you love the most from those 4?
Am I going to make enemies here?
Probably not.
One day, someone asked me exactly the same question, and I said, being a costume designer, it depends what I'm wearing. So it goes with my outfit, whether I'm Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin. Of course, everyone has a preference for Slytherin and Gryffindor, so I think I would aim that way.
Those are great answers. I'm a Ravenclaw. Always going after the wits and the learning. That's sort of always been my style. I've always gravitated toward just like having a good book, sort of sitting down and just learning as much as I can, which I guess is a good transition, is what we're going to do today, because I'm curious to learn a lot more about you and your career. And I want to start because with your backstory a little bit. I don't think we need to go into too much detail, but before we dive into the specifics of your work, I'd love if you could share what your experience was like growing up in France. Because I don't think I've ever had a guest on the show who has grown up in France. I've had people growing up in different places, but not there. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit about your experience growing up there.
I grew up in the south of France. I was born in Cannes. And I've got to say, it's a beautiful region. You're by the sea, obviously, but you can just drive for a couple of hours and you can go skiing in the winter. So we've got the opportunity to do a bit of both. Not just because I was born there, I've got to say it's a very pretty region. I love the smell of the sea wherever I go by the sea, and I think that's in my roots now. And I really long to go to the sea or see. What I really love, for example, is the reflection of the sun on the waves, and you get that kind of diamond effect. So, to answer your question, it was really great location to grow up in.
Yeah, it sounds not quite as romantic being in New York, but similar. I grew up in New York. I'm 20 minutes from the beach. So, by the way, not anywhere near as nice beaches as the Mediterranean. So I would love a beach on the Mediterranean. The beaches here, I could take it or leave it, but still 20 minutes from the sea, and then skiing just a couple hours away. Again, not quite as incredible as the French Alps, but we still have some incredible mountain ranges over in upstate New York.
So it's funny you say that because my dream is actually to have a house by the sea close to New York.
Yeah, it's still an incredible place to live, and obviously I've lived here my whole life, so I have to think that I really love living here. But it's certainly, when you compare it to what most people think in New York, you could live in New York or you could live in the south of France. I think a lot of people would say, well, the beauty of the south of France sure exceeds the beauty of New York. But we of course have lots of culture here, and similar to growing up in France, there's a lot of wonderful aspects to living here. So we have to talk about this aspect of your background. You're a designer and you work in a creative capacity, but in school you studied math, physics, and astronomy. So that almost seems to be dichotomous. And a lot of people either gravitate towards a scientific discipline or a creative discipline. So in your case, what prompted you to study those subjects, math, physics, and astronomy, but then later to pursue a career in design?
I loved math, physics, and astronomy. I'm still a geek at heart when it comes to planes and planets and things like that. And I'm still very knowledgeable about planes as well. So I think that's all my mathematical background coming back. Also, my budgets are very square. So I think all my studies in maths really helped me for that. So I love math and physics, and I carried on in that path. Yet I knew deep inside I wanted to do something creative. And at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, whether it was going to be interior design or more fashion orientated. I remember, or I recall at a very young age, drawing garments. And that was never explored. So I carried on studying. I did my baccalaureate, then studied, got my degree, and I decided to stop. And I wanted to have a sabbatical in London. And actually, I don't know if it was sabbatical or if it was just fate that said, you need to change direction. So I decided to come to London. And London gave me the opportunity to explore what was in me. And slowly I found a path that I was comfortable with. And became who I am today. And I'm forever grateful for London and the people that I've met on the way and what I did and what I achieved. I didn't do costume straight away, especially arriving in London. And then slowly I forged a path.
What do you think makes London an ideal city for your work? Because I know you've been now living there for the last 30 years.
Yep. I think London is very creative. It's a very good source of research. You meet incredible people. There's a great film industry for whoever is interested to work in the film industry with incredible talents. You can find so many options as well. And I think London gave me all this. If I'd stayed in France, I was more into a box at the time, studying math, physics, and astronomy. I would have been an engineer or a teacher or a professor, and I didn't want any of that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place. So let's talk more about your career. I gave a very basic introduction to your work. We were going to, of course, dive into some of the specific projects that you've worked on, talk quite a bit about Harry Potter. But for those who have never heard of you or your career, could you share a high-level overview of what you do and any of the, if you want to list out any of the examples of projects that you've worked on that listeners might recognize?
So I've set up my own company called Lolo Creative. We do costume designs and designs for entertainment, staff uniforms. We also do exhibits. I work mainly with Universal theme parks. We've done a lot of costumes for staff uniforms, entertainment, shows. But I also work for the Harry Potter tour, which started in London and then now in Japan and soon in China, doing the exhibits. And that's a job that keeps us busy all year long because we keep on changing stuff. There's also, Halloween, Christmas, all year long. This is what we do as a company.
It's exciting that you get to work on this, and you had the opportunity to work on 6 of the 8 Harry Potter films, which is a lot. Everything from the 3rd one, The Prisoner of Azkaban, all the way through the 8th film, The Deathly Hallows Part 2. And as I was doing research on you, in your bio, one of the things that stood out to me is it says that your creations are not merely costumes. They are, I'll quote here, they are living, breathing extensions of the wizarding world's magic. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this a little bit, what you mean by that, and how you go about making these costumes, those living, breathing extensions of the wizarding world's magic.
What's important for me and my team is to keep the dream going, I think. It's not just about the films. It's what came afterwards with the opportunities that Harry Potter gave me afterwards. And I really want to carry on this dream. And with my creative team, when we create for a theme park, we still try to be immersive, to put as much energy as I had in the films, and really portray an experience, an immersive experience. Especially, I really want the visitors to be englobed in that world, especially because the difference from what was done on the films to what is done now, for me, is that you watch a film, it's on the screen, you see details and it goes. When you go into a theme park and you see a show, you see the costumes, you see the staff, you actually centimeters away from them. So I think every detail is super important. Like we develop prints, buttons sometimes, or pieces of jewelry on the garments because we know that the customers are going to be so close. So we really want to recreate that immersive experience as if you were entering the screen into the film and just living in that world.
Yeah, I love that approach. How do you prepare for each film, or how I should say, how did you prepare for each film? what went into the research process? Did you have to read any of the books for more information? Did you do any other type of research that or prep that went into getting ready for your work on these films?
So it's so funny because when I first was approached by Jany Temime for Harry Potter 3, I barely knew about the story of Harry Potter. I knew it was famous, but I didn't know that much about it. Needless to say, I had to caught up with my knowledge, read the book, and obviously as we were working on the films 3 till the end, the books were coming out as we were shooting the previous book, basically. There is a lot of research involved. I did a lot of roles on the films. I started working as an illustrator and closely to Jany, and then I moved on to the sets, which actually was a very important path in my creative way as well, because working on sets, you learn all the aspects of the filming, and I worked also a lot with stunts, so you learn about all the technical ways. And this helps you in the future when you create a costume and you read a script. Then you understand all the elements that you need to consider when you design a costume because of the action of that character during that scene. And I think working on a lot of aspects of the filming was very important and really helped me to forge my career afterwards.
Yeah, and one of the things you're celebrated for is, or actually three of the things, your originality, your precision, and your deep respect for the IP. In this case, your deep respect for Harry Potter. Can you share examples of how these qualities manifested in the films? That originality, precision, and deep respect for the IP.
In the films or in the work we do now?
Either one.
So in the work that we do now, we always do a lot of research. Obviously, it's about whether it's Harry Potter or Minions or Jurassic World. It's about obviously watching the films, understanding more about the world. The sets are very important. It really influences us in the costume. We always try to do costumes according to what's been designed in terms of sets in the theme parks. And there's also a gut feeling. I think there's also a vision that you want to have as a designer. We also work with other creative directors responsible in the park, and sometimes we push the boundaries. We go into what they want to see, but we also propose other options that we feel could be really good for the IP. And it challenges them at times, but sometimes it's a win-win. They're like, oh, we didn't think of that. Yes, let's go into that direction.
Yeah. Is there a favorite design you have from Harry Potter? And I'll make it broad, either from the films or the parks or the studio tours.
So, yes. Because I started with Jany on Harry Potter 3 and I was doing illustrations for her, I love Michael Gambon because I remember as if it was yesterday the day I drew his costume. So I think this is very important for me. So that would be Michael Gambon, and the change in the school uniform is very important for me, but more than that, the Quidditch. I think that kind of really sporty feel into the Quidditch costume is important, and I really like that evolution into it.
And those are some really incredible costumes. And Michael Gambon, for those who don't know, played Dumbledore in the films. So,
oh yes, correct. Sorry.
Yeah. So, or at least up until I think the third one was his last one. Or maybe the second one was his last one. Oh no. Yes. Sorry. I was thinking of Richard Harris. Third one was his first one, and then he went all the way through to the end. Well, that's a incredible aspect of your portfolio to share. And I know a lot of fans will love hearing that you got to help design that costume. And Quidditch obviously is really great. thinking back, you spent a about a decade working on those Harry Potter films because they did span so many years. So, how did it feel for you to wrap up the eighth film?
Wow. If some of it felt a bit surreal. You know, when you spend so many years working on a franchise, of course, there were the other films in between.
Yes.
But it felt like such an achievement after doing six films. And then I was fortunate enough that the Harry Potter tour came along and they approached me to do some work for it, which I thought was just about lining up some costumes for the tour, and that was it. And I thought, well, it's just going to take us a week, and that's it. And it turned out to be actually a massive job that I didn't expect. When I did a bit of research, trying to find some cool mannequins that would englobe the work of Stuart Craig, try to really fit the environment. Just research for myself. And I went to this meeting and they said, what do you want to do? And I was like, what do you mean? I thought you just wanted me to line up 100 costumes for you. No, we don't know what we want. So it became a job, and about how we were going to set up the tour, what we were going to do, the look of the mannequins, and how it was going to be curated, and took us on a enormous journey. And what we thought was going to be a job for maybe 3 years, expectation, it was shot in, the tour is built in a soundstage. So we thought when it doesn't work anymore, well, they'll turn the soundstage into a shooting studio. And then 14 years later, it's expanded. We still work on it. We still love it. And we did the one in Japan as well. And there's more coming up.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I would imagine that working on costuming for a physical environment that real people are going to be walking through day after day is probably in some ways different from developing a costume for film where everyone who's going to be seeing it is going to be seeing it through a lens, and that presents differences in physics. I think it presents differences in creative direction. How do you physically or in your process adapt for something on film versus a real costume that would be at a studio tour or at a theme park?
So the costumes are at the studio tour, for example, they are the original costumes that we had on the film. We just have to make sure that they displayed gracefully with the right lighting, that to make the most of it. And we always give a pose to the mannequin, so you forget that it's actually a mannequin, but it is almost like a caricature of the actor or the character. So this is why I had some fully articulated mannequins made for the show. For the theme park, it's slightly different because you have an operational problem. It's not a problem. It's something we have to face. Those garments are washed on a daily basis, where the costumes for the films, it's one-off, and then you've got someone looking after it, and then it's shot on it for just a couple of days, and then it's archived. And then we really look after it when we display it in the tour. For the theme park, it's something that's going to be washed on a daily basis. So it's a different approach in the fabrics, different approach in the techniques, different approach in the prints. We do have embroidery at times, but maybe not as intricate as the ones that we have in the films, because it would be too fragile. Yeah, so we work our way around, but we still try to be accurate to the IP and the dream. We do not cut down on details. That is for sure something that we push, and we push again and again. And this is why we always create either a piece of jewelry or a satchel that would carry a wand, or something intricate that's related to the characters.
Yeah, I'm sure there are many obstacles that you would face in this capacity, and I'm wondering if one stands out from your memory. Again, either if it was from the films or from the studios or from the theme parks, as a challenge that was particularly complex, or an obstacle that you had to take several attempts to correct or to improve upon. Was there anything that you remember being particularly challenging or difficult to bring to life from any of those Harry Potter examples?
So I think working in the film industry really teaches you to come up with answers or solutions, and quickly. It's a quick turnaround, and on Potter we had the opportunity to have tests. A very good example would be when I started on Harry Potter 4, the Goblet of Fire, and we started doing tests in the water for obviously the upcoming sequence. There was a massive tank that was built at Leavesden, incredible, like probably 18 meters by 80 meters, 6 meters deep. Incredible. I'd never seen something like that in my life. And we did some costume tests. So Potter, the character for that scene, was wearing a burgundy vest. And then he goes in the water, we shoot him, and the vest looks black, literally black. So it's all these things that you learn as you go along. So what we did in the costume department, we created exactly the same vest, but made it a bright red. And it turned out that that bright red, once it was submerged in the water, looked burgundy. So when you look at the film, you see Harry outside of the water with that burgundy top, and you see Harry in the water still with a burgundy top. It turns out that there are actually two different tops, because it was impossible to shoot with the same, because the colors were changing so dramatically. This is all the kind of stories that I love to learn when you do a film. And even nowadays, when you do a show and they say, oh, we're going to have an acrobat, it's going to be flying, and then this is going to be cables, but then we want this effect to happen. You always think technically how you're going to make it work. And then you do tests, and then if it doesn't work, you find another solution quite quickly.
Yeah, that is a great example of how developing anything physical for a film can be challenging, because it's good that you do those tests to identify what obstacles you'll have to overcome. And as a viewer of the film, you would have no idea that it's two different costumes. And it's that sort of movie magic that I love. It's how you make things seem seamless and real. And there's a lot of detail and thought that has to go into making those films feel that way. And that's a really great example that you shared, that I think a lot of people will now, when they watch the fourth film, think about when they see it. But it makes for a really interesting story. Now, one of the things I think I mentioned kind of very briefly at the beginning of our conversation that I want to dive into, because I think it's important to discuss, not just for your career, but something I see in general in the creative industry, or any sort of creative discipline, is that there's always this assumption from fans that everyone who worked on that film or that theme park creation or that studio tour or any that product, that they themselves are these fans that just want to bring their fandom to life. And in some cases that's true. I think, for instance, I speak to a lot of Imagineers, and I think that a vast majority of Walt Disney Imagineers began as fans of Disney. It's that part of that DNA that there's this great care for an affinity for what they do. But there are plenty of examples of Imagineers I've spoken to that I know are not necessarily fans of Disney. They appreciate it, they enjoy what they do, but they're not a fan the same way a Disney fan would be. And I know in your case, you'd even mentioned that when you started working on the third film, you didn't know too much about Harry Potter. And when we had the chance to chat offline, you had mentioned that, again, I'm going to use that word, you're not necessarily a fan of Harry Potter or of all the IP that you design. And I think some people might find this to be surprising or, even, sacrilege to feel that way. But I think in some cases, and in many cases, that could actually be an asset for a project, to not necessarily be a fan of it, but to still care about it and to still want to do right by it. So could you speak a little bit to that, not necessarily being a fan, and how that may have actually benefited your work?
I totally agree that in some ways it's actually good not to be a fan, not to be influenced by the world. Also, the first time I said, no, I'm actually not a fan. I love the IP and I'm really grateful for it, and I love the world and I love the fantasy behind it. But we created that world. It's different. It is a job. When we work now for the tour and the theme parks for Universal, I love my job, and we all put a lot of energy to make it the most beautiful job that we can. It doesn't mean that I'm a massive fan of Harry Potter or any other IP, whether it's, like we said, Minion, Jurassic World, or Transformers that we did. And I think it's good so you can see clearly and have a bigger vision of the whole world. And it's easier to see what you're going to create for that world, that if I was completely immersed and fanatic about the world that we're going to create for instance, reaching out here to Madonna, if I was to design something for Madonna that I'm a massive fan of, I really wouldn't know where to start. And would I get influence from what's been done before? There's also that, do you get influence from what's been done before because you're a fan? And I had on one job, one of my illustrator was a fan of what we were doing, and she intended of picking up things that had been done before. And I was like, yes, it's great, but it's been done, and what we need to create is something new. Still being with the same environment, but something new. So I think not being a fan is actually an asset. That said, I do have some of my assistants that are absolutely fanatic about the world, and it does help me also because it's my little encyclopedia, if you want. When I have questions, I just ask them, and they always have all the answers that I need.
Yeah, it's a diversity of thought. You have those who are very knowledgeable about the world and can speak to particular details, and then you have others who are also, have experiences and interest outside of that world, who can take from other sources and amplify what you're doing with your project to make it even better. So I think that's very very a very astute observation in philosophy, that you don't necessarily have to be a fan to work on a particular project, and it can, again, to your point, be an asset to that project as well. Now, when it came to working on the Universal theme parks, again, there's Harry Potter at the Universal theme parks, so I'd imagine a lot of what you did had to do with a lot of that work. Did you already talked about some of the operational challenges of developing costumes for a theme park, but beyond the operational challenges, did you find that you were starting completely from scratch, or how much of what you developed for the theme parks drew from what you had developed previously for the films or for the studios, the
We
tours?
start from scratch. We do not copy a costume from the film into the theme parks, whether it's for Potter. The exception for Potter is the school uniforms, which you can still see in the theme park, but everything else is different. We don't take a costume from the film and make it a staff uniform. The same for any other IPs like the Hulk or Jurassic World. There is an inspiration behind it, obviously, but we start from scratch. No, we never copy likes for likes.
I'm curious if you can explain why that's the case.
Why? I think it's an infringement.
That makes sense.
Legally, I don't think we're allowed to do it. I think there is a right reserved for what's being created for the films, and as if we create a theme park, it's different. And we don't even think about it. Not once we thought, oh, we really like the costume, let's just copy paste it.
Right.
No. Also, that's not the point as a designer. You want to have your influence into the designs and bring something new. So I think this is why. These are the two main reasons.
I was thinking that the legal side was probably a part of that, but I also can see the other side of it, that you'd want to start from scratch. You'd want to take a fresh approach. Yeah, and also the story can be different. It's an expansion of the universe. It's an expansion of the franchise, but not necessarily a direct retelling of the film. It's living in the wizarding world in this case, or living in the Jurassic world, that you are you need to think a little differently about the designs that you bring to that creation. Yeah, go
Even
ahead.
for the exhibits for the Harry Potter tour, it's a very good example for this year because we were celebrating the Goblet of Fire, and we did an exhibit in London, but we also did an exhibit in Japan. We proposed ideas for both tours, but they weren't the same. The aim was to have two different looks, because if you are a super fan and you want to see the tour in London and you want to go to the tour in Japan, you don't want to see the same things. So this is the same when we create costumes for theme parks, whether it's Universal or Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, you have been working with, and in this case, Warner Brothers and Universal for a long time, which speaks to the quality of your work, but I think it extends even beyond that. So for someone who is maybe working in the same field as you, or in a similar field, who does a lot of work with studios or with media companies, how do you maintain a lasting partnership like the one that you've built? Because you're not directly working, like you said, you have your own organization. So it's not like you're a Warner Brothers employee or you're a Universal employee. You are your own entity. So how do you maintain that lasting partnership with these same organizations?
Work.
Yeah.
It's producing good work. It's etiquette. It's standard. We really value the work that we do, the designs that we do. We listen to the client. It's very important as well. We still bring our vision, which is important to me. It's a lot of work. I started on my own. We quite a few people now. And I'm really proud of what I've achieved and what we've achieved and what all of my team does, because without them, I would be nothing, and I wouldn't be able to expand. But I think what keeps our clients is not just that French je ne sais quoi. It's a lot of work, and the quality of the work that we supply, and the diversity of the designs that we have as well.
Yeah, I think the work often speaks for itself, and especially in this field is the most important aspect. But to your point, those elements of etiquette and making sure that you work hard to maintain those relationships is really important. You brought up something just now that I think is a valuable discussion. You started, as you said, working on your own, and now you have a team. And I think there are a lot of people, whether it's going to pursue a creative discipline or a more scientific or math engineering discipline, a lot of people dream of striking out on their own and building their own company, or their own organization. And in your case, you've been very successful with that. So how do you think, when you think back to your success, how did you move from starting out on your own to now operating a team underneath you? Like, what were some of the steps, or the philosophies, I should say, that helped you to grow to that point?
I think it's an organic process. As there is an evolution into your work, and you ask to do more and more and bigger projects, you have the need to start having one other person to work with you. And then when it's not one, it's two. And then for the tour, I employed different talents. And for my theme park designs, I've got a totally different team. But they all have their own talents as well. And then I've built up those talents throughout the years, from people I know from the film industry, and then from people who know people, and then some people who approached me, and some people that I found. It didn't just happen from one day to another. It was gradually happening. I think I'm quite faithful to my people as well. And for me, it's hard to trust someone, and it's a very long process that I've established throughout the years to build the people that I'm working with. And I think they're all beautiful with their own talents. And I work with some incredible people who worked on incredible films, but they're still willing to work with me as soon as I have a big project. Like, for example, Lisa Tomlin, who was hair chief on Harry Potter. We worked very closely together. We've done all the tours together for years, and other projects, obviously, just to name her.
Yeah, that's great that you've built those connections. Now, we've spoken a lot about Harry Potter. You've worked on other franchises and other projects as well. So, not to go through all of them, but are there any that you feel most passionate about, or that you are most proud of, that you want to discuss further?
We're working on a very cool project at the moment, which I obviously cannot talk about.
We'll come back when you can talk about it, and we'll discuss more about that.
When it opens, we go there and on site and do another podcast.
Even better.
I loved The Hulk, and I loved Volcano Bay, for two reasons. I think the Hulk helped me in my career. We had already done some Harry Potter stuff, but then it was the next step, and they approached me to do the Hulk, and I would have done it for free. I didn't, but it was just me. Once again, I started on my own, and I was doing everything, and it was about they created that new environment. It was just a revamp of the ride, and I really loved it. And we did those costumes, and from those costumes, I got an award. which I think really helped. And then afterwards, Volcano Bay came on, and I started Volcano Bay, and it was completely different. It was like, we were going to be with a different element. We were going to have to face the sun, the water, and swimsuits, and all of that. And it's also, as you go on some jobs, it's also a learning curve, and you learn different things that which you can do, what you can't do, and just in terms of budget, for example, I remember someone saying, why is your biggest budget going into the people that go in the water? They only have swimsuits. Well, actually, no. They've got rash guards, they've got a t-shirt, they've got a sweatshirt, they've got a tracksuit. So they ended up having so many garments just for them. They don't just go in the water. I also like the spirit behind Volcano Bay, behind the design. It was like, those people have been on this island for years and everything has been faded by the sun. So it was all that kind of design behind it. So I think I really enjoyed those two projects. I love the other ones as well, but these, I think, were two massive stepping stones. And also Volcano Bay was the whole park, was the first time I was handling the whole park.
And that's exciting. And Volcano Bay is a gorgeous park. So that's, I could see how that would present so many different challenges than ones you've had to encounter before. Like I said a moment ago, we have so many other projects we can talk about, and we could, I think, bookmark some of that for another discussion to keep most of this focused on Harry Potter. But to wrap up with a couple of questions, the first one I have is, we're going to look back and then look forward. So looking back, if you were to speak to someone starting out who is looking to pursue a similar career to you, they see your success, they see some of the projects you've had the chance to work on, what advice would you offer? I think you've given some pieces of wisdom when it comes to making sure your work is top notch and working to build relationships with clients, honoring the details, being detail oriented. Is there anything else you would offer for advice for people starting out? If you were to go back to your former self 30 years ago, that you wish you would have gotten as advice, or that you did get as advice 30 years ago?
Two things. If you think you can't make it because you're actually at the moment studying law or God knows what, if you've got a passion, if you're driven by your passion, whether it's, in my case, costume designs, it could be hair and makeup, it could be pastry or anything, going into every single direction. There are so many jobs and opportunities. I also considered stage design for concerts. I think that if deep inside this is engraved inside of you and you've got your gut feeling and your passion for it, no matter what you've studied, I think at some point in your life, you will end up doing it. So do not forget your passion. Do not lose your vision. My second point is, it's work. Don't be fooled. It's work. It's a lot of work. Constantly. And especially when you build up your company, you've got the responsibility of the people working with you, you've got the responsibility of the job, but you also have the responsibility of the clients and the whole company itself. It's not just about getting a job, it's about, once you sign, it's about delivering it. And there's a money restriction, there's a time limit, and handling few people at the same time can be tricky at times. Make sure you've got all those dominoes working together and all those pieces of the puzzle come together to do the job. So yes, it is a lot of work. Don't be fooled about that.
Yeah, I think that's why people who are the most passionate or interested in what they do are the ones who often are the most successful, because they're interested in putting in the work, and it's maybe not always fun, but at the very least interesting, and makes you curious about that project that you're working on or the next thing you're going to be doing. which brings you to my last question. You don't have to talk about specific projects you're working on. I don't want to, I don't want you to have to to talk about any of that because I know you're not always allowed to.
I want to step in and say, oh my God, it's so exciting, but I can't talk about it.
But thinking ahead, like, I don't want to say, same last 30 years versus next 30 years, but what keeps you moving forward? What is it that you are most excited about as you move forward in your career?
I think I'm someone who never looks back and always looks ahead, and I always look at the next challenge, the next thing. What can we do next? It's almost like we sign up a job and I'm like, okay, what's next? I haven't even started the job. I like that. Sometimes it goes into the wide. I don't know what next is going to be, and then it happens. And then in the meantime, we do like 3-4 projects at the same time. The company is growing, which is what I wanted. But funny enough, I want the company to grow, so I've got more headspace to do other projects, whether it's costume design for something or I actually would love to design for a concert. Just putting it out there, whether it will come or not, I don't know. That would be something I would be quite excited about. Without stopping the work that we're doing at the moment. I'm definitely not neglecting what we're doing. Yeah, I kind of forgot your question in the end.
No, you answered it. I think concerts is one thing, and also keeping your organization growing and looking for leaving open some room to work on other projects as well. So that's all very inspirational, and I only foresee you continuing to succeed and continuing to grow because of everything you've mentioned about how you approach your work and the examples of the work we've discussed today that are in the fan consciousness. I know a lot of fans listening are love whether or not they knew it was you who created it, love the work that you created, and because of your history and how you approach things. By the way, that approach is actually to throw in Disney a little bit, because I know we haven't talked about Disney this entire conversation, but when you said you never look back, that is actually a direct quote from a costume designer from the Disney universe, which is Edna Mode from The Incredibles. She has the exact same approach. She never looks back. The exact quote she has is, "I never look back. It distracts from the now." So
correct.
Yeah, bringing it slightly into a Disney parallel for just a moment. I thought that was it. Just as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is exactly what Edna Mode says, and she works in a very different world, of course, but a very similar creative discipline.
And it's funny because I never feel nostalgic about what we've done. I never say, oh, I wish we could do that same project again. I feel proud, but I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. What's next?
Yeah, and that is actually also a very again, Disney, a very Walt Disney philosophy that it literally quote of his is keep moving forward. He never, again, forget what happened yesterday. What are we working on for tomorrow? What's the next thing that's coming? And obviously that brought him a lot of success and is a philosophy I think more people should adopt, not to get nostalgic for the past that has been done, but what are you going to be working on now? What are you going to be doing now? What's the future like? I love that philosophy. So, Lolo, this has been fun, interesting, different for this show, and I think is, I'm curious to get feedback from listeners if this is a topic they enjoyed, and certainly when you can speak about some of the other projects you're currently working on and excited about, we'll have to bring you back to talk about some of that. But it has been a real pleasure having you on the show, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be talking with you, and I think it's very interesting, and I hope to inspire at least one person.
I'm sure you inspired more than that, definitely.
And thank you. You've been such a great host as well.
Oh, my pleasure. Welcome back to Imagination Central. Before you exit this episode, remember to follow Imagination Skyway on social media and share the show with anyone who might enjoy listening to our program. For ad-free episodes and bonus content, create a free account or sign up for a premium subscription at patreon.com/imaginationskyway. When you're ready for your next vacation, remember that listeners of Imagination Skyway can get rewarded for booking a trip to Disney in 2026 through KMV Travel, voted the top travel agency in Orlando in 2025. Simply fill out the form at kmvtravel.com/skyway and make sure that you select Imagination Skyway under the How Did You Hear About Us question to be eligible for a special gift from the team. Terms and conditions apply. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Thank you so much for joining me aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.